Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome to my channel, The English Gate, English for You. Today, inshallah, we will have a new chapter from A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. The story for Prep 3 and Our Sons Abroad. The title of the chapter is The Trial of Charles Darnley. Time, 5 years later, this year, 1780. Place, the Old Bailey Court in London, England. Mr. Attorney General accused Darnley of collecting information about England for the benefit of France. I'd like to see or to know, my dear students, that this chapter is one of the most important chapters in the first term, because we'll see in that chapter new characters. We will meet for the first time Charles Darnley and Sydney Carton. Also, we will see new witnesses, John Parsard and others, and we will see Dr. Manette in his new condition after he has recovered and became well again. Summary of the chapter. 5 years had passed and Dr. Manette regained his health, returned to practicing medicine, and lived happily with his daughter in London. England had been at war with the Americans for 5 years, but France was helping the Americans and England was losing her battles. There was a trial at the Old Bailey Court, a trial of treason. كانت محاكمة بالخيانة. The accused man was Charles Darnley. Charles Darnley was charged with passing government secrets about the English army to the French king. The Attorney General accused Darnley that he had collected information about the English troops, القوات الإنجليزية, that were going to the English colonies in North America. There were 6 witnesses against Darnley. They were: first one, John Parsard, Roger Clive, Mr. Lorry, Lucy Manette, Dr. Manette, and a 6th witness. Mr. Lorry, Miss Manette, and Dr. Manette were called to testify against Charles Darnley because they had met him on board the ship that carried them from Calais to Dover 5 years ago, when they were moving Dr. Manette secretly from Paris. Darnley's lawyer was Mr. Stryver, and this is the first time we see this character, Mr. Stryver, and his assistant was Mr. Sydney Carton. كان المساعد بتاعه Sydney Carton. The first witness, John Parsard, said that he discovered that Darnley was a spy because he found lists of the movements of the English troops in his house. وجد قائمة بالقوات الإنجليزية في منزله. But Mr. Stryver proved that Parsard was an ex-convict, متهم سابق, and a gambler ومقامر, and spoiled his witness وأفسد شهادته. The second witness, Roger Clive, was Darnley's servant. He said that he had seen Darnley's papers and lists of the troops and military equipment that England was sending to North America. He also said that he saw him give these papers to some Frenchmen on the boat that travels between Dover and Calais. But Mr. Stryver proved that Roger Clive was a thief and was once working for the French government himself. كان لص وعمل للحكومة الفرنسية من قبل, and therefore his witness was spoiled, وبالتالي أفسد شهادته الثانية. The third witness was Mr. Lorry. The attorney General asked Mr. Lorry if Charles Darnley was one of the passengers traveling with him in the mail coach from London to Dover 5 years ago, but Mr. Lorry said that it was so dark to identify him. Mr. Lorry also said that he had met Charles Darnley on the boat that brought them back to England, but he hadn't spoken to him as he spent all his time in his cabin. The fourth witness, Miss Manette, didn't want to say anything against Charles Darnley, but the solicitor pushed on her to tell the jury what she had seen. دفعها لكي تقول ما رأته. She said that the accused, المتهم, met two French gentlemen and she saw him exchange papers with them. He told her that he had been traveling on important business and he was working under a false name because his business would get him people into trouble. قال لها أنه يعمل تحت اسم مستعار لأن عمله قد يجعل ناس آخرين ينخرطون في بعض المشاكل. The fifth witness, Dr. Manette, said that he couldn't remember anything because about that period of time or what had happened on board the ship. Why? Because he was in a very bad healthy condition. The sixth witness testified اعترف أنه that on that Friday night in 1775 he had seen Darnley waiting for someone in a hotel in the town near where the two passengers had left the mail coach. The Attorney General tried to convince the jury that Darnley was exchanging secret military information with those men. Sidney Carton, Stryver's assistant, had something to spoil that witness. He sent Mr. Stryver a piece of paper telling him to ask the witness to look at Sidney Carton and say whether he was the man collecting the information or the accused man, Charles Darnley. استغل الشبه اللي ما بين سيدني كارتون وما بين تشارلز دارني لتشويش الشاهد، وبالتالي جعله يقول أنه غير متأكد أيهما الذي رآه. The witness was confused. Both men looked exactly the same. He couldn't tell which was which, أيهما. Mr. Stryver summed up his defense saying Joe Parsard was a liar, Roger Cly was a hired spy and a traitor. Lucy couldn't recognize the papers. Mr. Lorry and Dr. Manette saw nothing. The sixth witness couldn't identify the prisoner, and the lists that were found in Darnley's house weren't in his handwriting. لم تكن بخط يده, which proves that the accusation was a trap. كانت الاتهامات عبارة عن مكيدة for the prisoner for family reasons in France, بسبب مشاكل عائلية في فرنسا من أسرته. At last, the jury declared that the prisoner was not guilty, أن المتهم غير مذنب. When the crowds left the courtroom, Sidney Carton invited Charles Darnley to dine together, يتعشوا سويا. They went to a nearby tavern and Darnley thanked Carton warmly. Carton said, "You don't have to thank me. It was nothing, but it must feel good to have such a beautiful young lady as Lucy Manette pity you and cry for you." It was clear that Darnley had and Carton fell in love with Lucy. كلاهما أحب Lucy. Carton envied Darnley. كان بيحسده when Lucy felt pity for him in the courtroom. Carton told Darnley that he was disappointed with life. محبط من حياته. He was a failure at everything and that he cared for nobody and nobody cared for him. No blue eyes would fill with tears for him. as Lucy Manette did for Donny. Donny advised him to make better use of his brilliant talents, أن يستغل ذكائه بطريقة أفضل, and left. Later that evening, Sydney Carton went to Mr. Stryver's office to help with some legal papers. Although Stryver was a popular and successful attorney, محامي ناجح, the truth was that his brilliance in the courtroom came about as a result of his evening's works with Carton, whose brilliant mind solved many of Stryver's cases. كان النجاحات التي يحققها سترايفر في مكتب المحاماة كانت تعود لذكاء سيدني كارتون. Sydney asked Carton what gave him the idea of the lookalikes, and Carton said, I just thought that Donny was a handsome fellow and that I might have been like him if had some luck. قد أكون مثله لو أن لي بعض الحظ. Stryver told him that success and happiness don't come out of luck. أن السعادة والنجاح لا يأتيان بالحظ, but rather out of hard work. He advised Carton to try to help himself as little as he never even tried to do that. Carton was happy to help others, but never himself. He was that way when he was at the law school, and he is that way when he is a lawyer. كان ذلك عندما كان في مدرسة القانون أو مدرسة الحقوق, وكذلك عندما كان محامي. And he's going to be the same way in love. وكذلك في الحب سوف يساعد تشارلز دوني لكنه لن يساعد نفسه. Questions and answers. Yes. First question. What was Charles Darnley accused of? بماذا اتهم تشارلز دارني? He was accused of being a spy, جاسوس, who collected information about the English army for the benefit of France. Who were the witnesses? من كان الشهود? They were John Parsons, Roger Cly, Mr. Lorry, Dr. Manette, Lucy Manette, and a sixth witness. Why did Mr. Lorry, Lucy, and Dr. Manette become witnesses? Because they had met him on the same boat that had taken them from France to England 5 years ago. How was Sydney Carton's presence at the court of great importance? This is one of the most important questions. كيف كان وجود سيدني له أهمية كبرى في قضية Charles Darnley? Sydney Carton, the assistant of the lawyer, looked exactly the same as Charles Darnley. This helped Mr. Stryver spy the witness of the sixth witness, شهادة الشاهد السادس, who was confused and couldn't tell which one of the two young men met the two people and exchanged the information with. Where was the trial of treason? أين كانت محاكمة الخيانة? It was at the Old Bailey Court in London. What advice did Darnley give to Sydney Carton? He advised him to try to use his talents and يستغل ذكائه better and to care for people in order to find friends around him. If you want to know why I am getting drunk, it is because I am disappointed with life. Comment. This is one of the most important quotations, and I want you to take care of these kind of quotations. Sydney Carton said this to Darnley in the tavern في المقهى أو الحانة after the trial. Carton envied Darnley for the many friends who cared for him. He also envied him, كان يحسده, when he noticed that Lucy cried and felt pity for him. You might have made better use of your brilliant talents. Comment. Who said this? Of course, these words were said by Darnley. Charles Darnley said this to Carton in the tavern after the trial. Carton had declared that he never liked anybody. Darnley didn't know that Carton saved his life for the sake of Lucy, من أجل خاطر Lucy, and to help Mr. Stryver ولمساعدة Mr. Stryver للنجاح في المحاماة. The lawyer, he advised him to use his talents to make a better life for himself. You are content to help others أنت قانع بمساعدة الآخرين but never yourself. Comment. Mr. Stryver said this to Sydney Carton, who was upset because he never had any luck in his life and wished he would be happy like Charles Darnley. Mr. Stryver reminded him that he had always been like a jackal, working hard for the benefit of others. And there was a question in one of the exams, who stands for the jackal and who stands for the lion? Of course, Sydney Carr stands for the jackal that helped others but doesn't help or couldn't help himself. And Sydney Carr and Stryver stands for the lion because he always gains the fruit. كان يحصد الثمار. I care for no man, and no man cares for me. Of course, these words were said by Darnley. Carton said, these words were said by Sydney Carton to Charles Darnley. I care for no man, and no man cares for me. Carton said this to Darnley in the tavern after the trial. He confessed اعترف أنه that he never cared for anyone and no one seemed to care for him. Mr. Stryver was the mouth that voiced Carton's intelligence. This is very important questions also. Explain. كان هو الفم الذي يتحدث عن ذكاء سيدني كارتون. That's right. Stryver was a popular and successful attorney, but it was all because of Carton's intelligence. All the success that Stryver had at the courtrooms came about as a result of his evening's work with Carton, whose brilliant mind solved many of Stryver's cases. That's the end of our questions today. And now, my dear students, we will see a very short scene of the movie that will support the chapter.
In his wars against England in North America. He has thus indirectly aided the American general, George Washington, in his hopeless struggle against our noble country.
Your Lordship, I will prove to this court that this man, Charles Darnley, is a contemptible spy. The prisoner has been passing and repassing from France to England on secret business of which he can give no good account.
Stephanie, good God, man, there's a trial going on here. Get out of yourself.
Late night. Sorry.
I have witnesses in this courtroom today who saw the prisoner on a trip from France 9 months ago. It is my information that they saw the prisoner confer with fellow conspirators on a packet out of Le Havre. I propose to call one of these witnesses at this time. Dr. Manette. Dr. Manette, can you identify the prisoner as your fellow traveler returning from France?
Unfortunately, I was recovering from a long illness at the time. My mind It was a blank, you see, for a long period. And I can only thank a gracious God now for restoring my faculties once again.
Once again, can you identify the prisoner?
No.
Were you traveling alone?
I was accompanied by Mr. Jarvis Lorry and my daughter.
Thank you. I now call Miss Lucy Manette.
What a beauty we have here.
You have looked upon the prisoner.
Yes,
Speak up, please.
I have.
Did you not see this man confer with two other men aboard the packet when you returned from France? Speak up, please. We cannot hear you.
Yes, I saw him.
And were there not papers passed between these men that night?
I saw papers. I could not hear what was said. Mr. Darnay told
The
me...
prisoner.
Prisoner. Yes. He was very kind to me and to my father. Very considerate. I do hope that nothing I say here today will repay him by doing him any harm.
You may not wish to testify against the prisoner, Miss Manette, but be that as it may, is this the man you saw? Speak up!
Yes.
Thank you very much. I will now call upon Mr. John Barsan.
I saw the prisoner with my own eyes. I watched him as he passed on secret information to two French gentlemen on 3 different occasions.
You are absolutely certain that it was the prisoner here, Charles Darnay, who passed on this vital and important government information about our military strength to these spies?
I am, sir.
Would you, sir, be so very kind as to amplify your public-spirited gesture even further by telling the court in more detail about the events which surrounded the passing of this vitally important government information that evening?
Yes, sir. I should be delighted. It was during the month of February that I had occasion to travel to France.
Oh, what do you have, my wicked fellow?
I'll have 2 crown, if you don't mind, please.
But of course, the money first, always.
He works for the French. Him.
When I espied the prisoner.
He's a paid
The
informer.
prisoner in the dock.
Real name, Guillermin.
Sailing late. As I mounted the gangplank,
Spies for the French everywhere. Nasty reputation. Just mention his real name, that's all.
there was something odd
You
about
do that, and he'll suddenly forget
These are
what
the
he's here for.
information
Who
that
paid him
he
this time?
got
knows?
about the
Someone
witness
in
in
France,
person
doesn't
that he
matter.
worked for the
You want him
French
to shut up.
government,
the prisoner.
Mention his real
and
name.
his
The air was
witness was a spy.
Then the papers were passed between them.
So he will give that
And the prisoner
paper
went to his
to
cabin,
Sydney
where he stayed for the
Carton,
rest of the
so
journey.
to his lawyer.
I thank you for your
Mr.
testimony,
Stryver.
sir. And I wish to commend you now in this courtroom for the noble and patriotic duty of coming forward to identify this traitor.
Will the defense will question the witness.
You may proceed.
What do you live upon, sir?
Property.
What property?
I can't precisely remember where.
This information that you say you saw passed on, did you actually read it?
Yes, sir. But I didn't study on it. Marked secret, you know.
How much did you receive to give this evidence today?
Nothing.
Nothing at all to lay a trap for this prisoner?
No.
You swear to
يقول له
that?
كم تلقيت لكي تقول هذه الشهادة
I do.
فقال لا شيء. هل
My lad, I have no further questions.
تلقيت شيء لكي تشترك في هذه البكيدة؟
Oh, just one moment, my lad, if I may.
هنا سيدني كارتون سيتدخل ويعطيه الورقة التي تفسد شهادة هذا الشاهد.
If I may, sir.
وسوف يقول اسمه الحقيقي.
Tell this court that you're absolutely certain in your identification of this prisoner. Yes, sir. Have you ever seen anyone who looked like the prisoner? Not so much as I'd be mistaken. I ask you then to look upon my learned colleague here, Mr. Sidney Cotton. Stand still.
أحضر سيدني كارتون.
Would you lay aside your wig, sir?
وسيستغل الشبه ما بين الاثنين لإفساد شهادة هذا الشاهد. يرون أنهم بعض كثيرا.
Are they not very much like each other? Look closely, sir. Well, yes, there's a certain similarity. But I'm not mistaken. The man I saw on the wharf was the prisoner, Charles Dunley. I should like to probe your memory a little further, Mr. Guillemin. Yes? Would you like a closer look, perhaps, Mr. Guillemin?
The name of the witness is Bart, sir.
Oh, yes, yes, of course. Forgive me. Speak up, sir. Do you remain certain in your identification?
عندما قال له اسمه الحقيقي بدأ يشعر
Louder, please, sir. I don't believe the court heard your answer.
No.
No. You can no longer identify the prisoner as the man you saw. Correct? It could have been someone else. Correct?
Correct.
Thank you, sir.
نكتفي بهذا القدر أعزائي الطلاب. Today, inshallah, we will continue with chapter 5. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to put like and subscribe to my channel. Till we meet again, wish you the best of luck. Thank you.